So we got Stephen A talking about how LeBron's never gonna win a ring again. We got Kendrick Perkins talking about how the Lakers are hot garbage. And we got the whole media, all the NBA fans out there, all the basketball fans out there. Everybody's talking about how garbage the Lakers are. Everybody's talking about how bad the Lakers are. Everybody's talking about how the Lakers are not winning no chips anytime soon. And that starts this year. That is absolute and utter blasphemy. Whatever all these people are smoking, whatever they're taking, I want some, because clearly it's very strong. Have we never heard of context? Now look, I get it. I'm not saying that the Lakers are flawless. They're definitely far from being a flawless basketball team. Far from it. Right now, being coached by a defensive-minded head coach, by the defensive guru that is Frank Vogel, they sit at 27th in the NBA in opponent points per game. They're allowing, on average, 112.1 points per game. And keep in mind, there's 30 teams in the league. So to sit at 27th in any given statistic, that is not a good sign. However, like I said, keyword, context, right? At the end of the day, coaches aren't the ones playing basketball on the floor. As it pertains to a head coach's importance, it's not as important in basketball as it is in, let's say, in the NFL. In the NBA, it's all about the talent that they have and whether or not that talent can prosper and ultimately win an NBA championship. Whoever has the most given talent usually ends up winning the championships, or usually whoever has the best players ends up winning NBA championships. Now, when the Lakers won the championship a couple years ago in the bubble, who was quick to give Frank Vogel credit? Yes, he definitely deserves credit for being a head coach, for being a guy that steered the ship and leading this team to the promised land, but they weren't giving him all the credit in the world when they won the championship. It was all LeBron and AD and Rondo as well, to a certain extent, or to a lesser extent. And so now that the Lakers are supposedly in trouble, why is Frank Vogel on the hot seat? I understand there has to be a scapegoat, and you're not going to trade Russell Westbrook a couple months after trading for him. Is firing Frank Vogel, is that really going to solve everything? I don't think so. I think this Lakers basketball team, their biggest problem is obviously, yes, their defense. And maybe Frank Vogel isn't doing the best with the personnel that he has, maybe as it pertains to, you know, the sort of lineups that he's putting together, the sort of game plans that he's putting together, the sort of positions that he's putting his team in. Maybe it's not the best, but I don't think it should get to the point where he has to be fired. I don't believe that at all. And look, on the surface, yes, the Lakers are 27th, like I said, and the worst team in basketball, the 4-21 Detroit Pistons, are allowing less points per game than the Lakers. On top of that, to make matters worse, the Lakers are also 28th in the entire NBA in turnovers per game. Only the Warriors and the Rockets average more turnovers, and the Lakers are averaging north of 16. Now, but when you have a Russell Westbrook playing point guard, that's just bound to happen. That's inevitable for your basketball team. I mean, he's second in the entire NBA, for crying out loud, in turnovers per game, just under 5. And I'm not gonna crucify Russell Westbrook for averaging that many turnovers. I mean, his usage is astronomically high, even this year, just because LeBron has missed so much time. And so that's going to come with Russell Westbrook, especially when he's your primary decision maker, and especially when he's your primary ball handler in all the games that LeBron has missed. That's essentially what he has been all this year. But I say all that to say that relax. We all need to relax. The Lakers will be all right. And let's hop into it, shall we? With all LeBron-led teams, there's always a little bit of scrutiny. There's always a little bit of this narrative that, oh, in the regular season, they're struggling so mightily. They're struggling immensely. They're struggling in this department. They can't do this in that department. They can't do this. They're missing this. They're missing this, and so forth and so forth and so forth. However, this is the Los Angeles Lakers we're talking about, y'all. Laker Nation, the most iconic franchise in all of NBA history. They're tied with the Boston Celtics for the most championships in NBA history with 17th, and they're eyeing their NBA record 18th championship this coming season. Like I said, this is the LA Lakers we're talking about. So for as much as they've struggled this year, yes, I get it. They should not be 6th in the Western Conference after 27 games at 14-13. They should not only be 1 game above 500. But remember that keyword that I brought up earlier? Context. LeBron has missed 12 games. AD has been missing a couple of games here and there. Russell Westbrook hasn't really had all the time in the world to gel, and yet everybody's so quick to give up on this Lakers basketball team. Everybody wants to talk about statistics, right, and where they stand defensively. How about let's talk about where they stand offensively? They're top 5 in the NBA in points per game at 111.4. They're top 5 in the NBA in blocks per game at 5.7. They're top 6 in shooting percentage at 46.5%. And they're also top 7 in steals per game at 8.6. Now, like I said, this team isn't without its flaws. I understand LeBron, especially as it pertains to his health, should not be given the benefit of the doubt just because in the last couple of years he just had a hard time staying healthy, and you can't blame the man. He's literally personified what it means to be an NBA Iron Man, and so I'm willing to cut him a little bit of slack. I mean, all the games that he's missed this year, some of those games had to have been due to load management. I mean, if it were the playoffs, he wouldn't have missed those games. But some of those teams that they've lost to, I know they lost to a lottery-bound team like the Thunder twice. I know the Lakers have lost to the Grizzlies without a Ja Morant once. And so those are a little concerning, but chances are the Lakers aren't going to see the Thunder in the playoffs. And the Grizzlies, they're probably going to be in the playoffs, but let's be real, even the Grizzlies at full strength with Ja Morant playing like an MVP, they're not going to be able to knock off the Lakers in a 7-game series. But here's where I feel like the Lakers should kind of get a little bit more benefit of the doubt, or here's why I believe the Lakers shouldn't be in as much trouble as everyone is making it out to be. And no, it's not because, they still have LeBron, or it's because they have the best duo in basketball, LeBron and AD. I understand AD has been underwhelming to a certain extent this year. He's only averaging about 24 and about 11 boards per game, but he has not looked like the best player on the Lakers. With LeBron only getting older, with LeBron only ceding to father time eventually, inevitably, AD still hasn't been that guy who's supposed to take over the torch. A couple of years ago when he was still with the Pelicans, the most talked about players after LeBron and KD was AD. AD was supposed to take over, but now we got Giannis, we got Luka, we got Damian Lillard, we got Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic. We have a horde of other stars that are looking like they're ready to take over. And where's AD amongst all this? Isn't he still a top 5 player? Isn't he still a top 10 player? This year in particular, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say he's been a top 5 player, maybe a back end top 10 guy, but we all know what Anthony Davis is capable of. He's most definitely, most assuredly going to turn it up come playoff time. And I know it hasn't been there, but we've seen him at his heights, at the peak of his heights. We've seen him at the peak of his power. And so I'm not worried about AD's slow start to the season, or at least by his standards, a slow start. He'll get right, and come playoff time, he'll turn into the guy that helped lead this Lakers team to a championship back in 2020 in the bubble. I know LeBron won Finals MVP, but there's an argument to be made that Anthony Davis was arguably the Lakers' best player during their finals run. All those things being said, that's not the only saving grace that the Lakers have this season. Like I said, and I keep saying this ad nauseum, but this is the Los Angeles Lakers that we are talking about. And so with that in mind, the Lakers are going to make moves at the NBA trade deadline. I understand, as far as cap space goes, it doesn't look very bright. The Lakers are negative $48.6 million over the cap, and so that definitely limits their options as far as trading goes. But come January 15th, a guy like a Taylor Horton Tucker and his $9.5 million salary, Kendrick Nunn with his $5 million salary, those could become attractive pieces to rebuilding teams, or at least to other teams out there that could be looking to offload salary. And here's some guys that I have in mind that the Lakers could potentially target. Center Miles Turner of the Indiana Pacers, he has an $18 million salary for this coming season. Forward TJ Warren, also for the Pacers, who has a $12.5 million salary for the season. Forward Justin Holiday for the Pacers, who has a $6 million salary for this season, and who could be a bargain-based type of value. He's very underrated when it comes to his defense. He's a pretty good shooter, and he's not going to cost much. Another guy that the Lakers could target, Jeremy Grant of the Pistons, who's making about $20 million this year. Now that could be a little bit more of a stretch, seeing as how he's had career seasons in Detroit this year and last. So it might take the Lakers maybe dangling their future 2027 or 2028 first round pick. But look, this is the Lakers we're talking about, and so they're building for now, not for the future. Another guy that could be a possible trade candidate for the Lakers, Harrison Barnes of the Sacramento Kings, who's playing pretty well this year. He also carries about a $20 million salary cap for this year. Harrison Barnes is making about $20 million this year, and so it's not impossible for the Lakers to be able to match that, or at least come close to matching it in trade talks. Last but not least, Robert Covington, power forward for the Portland Trail Blazers. It's looking more and more like his minutes, or at least his time in the starting lineup, is probably going to be numbered. And so that being said, I think the Lakers are a team that could potentially pounce closer to the trade deadline, or at least after January 15th when THT becomes trade eligible. Now the Lakers could cobble together packages that include a THT, a Kendrick Nunn, maybe a Kent Bazemore, who's since fallen out of rotation. Now all those salaries put together, you have about 15, 16, close to 17 million to work with. And so while that's not identically matching Miles Turner's 18 million or Harrison Barnes' 20, maybe add another salary filler or two, and the Lakers could potentially put enough to entice a team like the Pistons to trade away Jeremy Grant. Like I said at the beginning of the show, they're the worst team at basketball, at least record-wise. They're sitting at 4-21, and so they're most definitely going to be looking to cobble together or put together young guys, young prospects, and picks to kind of build towards the future and to build around a Cade Cunningham. For as good as Jeremy Grant has looked, he just doesn't fit that Pistons timeline. And so instead of seeing him walk and leave Detroit as a free agent in the next year or so, why not trade him to a team like the Lakers and get something of return or something of value? I know the Lakers probably don't have the best package, but if not that many teams are looking to get a Jeremy Grant, the Lakers could loom as a potential target. Another thing, all LeBron-led teams have struggled in the past. This one's probably the most notable, but in Miami's first year with the Big Three, in their first 17 games, they started off 9-8. After that horrid start to the season, everybody was talking about, oh, the Heat are frauds, oh, they're not going to the finals, or oh, they have so many flaws, or oh, this team isn't going to gel together. Well, what ended up happening? Yes, they didn't win the chip, but they did go to the finals, and they lost in 6 games to the Dallas Mavericks. Point being, we're still 27 games into the regular season, or at least for the Lakers. And so I don't expect AD to be playing this bad, or excuse me, not bad, but at least relative to his standards. I expect AD to step it up come playoff time. He does still have the potential to be a top 5 player in this league, and that could show up at any given moment. We've seen plenty of flashes of that this year. He just needs to act like an alpha. He needs to make this his team. He needs to be the best player on his basketball team, not LeBron, not in his age 37 year. No, it needs to be AD. Good thing is, and the hope is, we've seen it before, we will see it again. Second thing, this is the Lakers franchise that we're talking about. They are going to make moves. It's not just the trade deadline. It's not just the guys that I brought up. There's also the buyout market. There's plenty of ways for this team to get better. There's a lot of positives with this team. Another positive is that as the season progresses, Russell Westbrook is only going to get more comfortable playing alongside LeBron, playing alongside AD, playing alongside the rest of the guys that this Lakers team has to offer. That's only going to get better. And last but not least, this is LeBron James that we're talking about. Whenever he's been healthy, his teams have always gotten deep into the playoffs, whether that's the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals. I understand last year they lost to the Suns in the first round, but AD just wasn't healthy. And I hate to be that guy that sounds like a Lakers apologist and a guy that's going to bring up their injuries and use it as an excuse, but these are all facts. AD is only going to get better. The Lakers are going to make moves at the trade deadline, and LeBron-led teams, as long as they're healthy, and I know that's a big if, but as long as they are healthy, they've usually been able to weather through the storm. And I feel like this is just the media creating headlines, creating stories for people to talk about. But I'm getting tired of it. Kendrick Perkins talked about how he's tired of the Lakers being talked about because they aren't very good. Well, I'm tired about people talking about the Lakers and saying how they aren't good because of this and that and this and that. Look, let's wait until the playoffs to really start talking about how bad this basketball team is, because if come playoff time they find themselves in trouble against a team that they shouldn't be losing to, then yes, okay, I'll start to worry. If they don't finish with at least a top 3, top 4, maybe top 5 seed in the West, then okay, I will worry. If they don't make any moves at the deadline or at the buyout market, then yes, okay, I will be worried. And if yes, they don't start to get their act together, if guys don't start to stay healthy, then yes, I will start to worry. But until then, never fear and relax. The Lakers will be all right. That marks the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, we have plenty of other content on our channel homepage, not just our drops, but I also guest appear on plenty of other podcasts, so be sure to check that out. We will be dropping more NBA content as the season progresses, and we'll also start live streaming soon, so stay tuned for that, Team Steezy. Last but not least, I know this is a basketball episode, but to all my pro football bettors out there, I know the season, at least the regular season, is coming to an end, so don't forget to use our link down below. Use BetUS to start placing your bets today. Start making some cash too. All glory to God, nothing but love, and Steezy out. Again, this video is going to be dedicated to Mr. Todd Nas. While that concludes this video, we have loads of other content. You don't have to stop watching there. Other content on our channel homepage, as well as our social media platforms. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for us. Tell a friend and tell a friend. Nothing but love, and Steezy out.